I'm thinking today's going to be life-changing. I just know that Kyle Buckland is going to do something that's going to turn everything upside down. Kyle, what are you doing today?
I'm going to show everybody how to stop making wimpy paintings.
Wimpy paintings? What are you talking about?
Wimpy paintings.
Wimpy paintings. What's a wimpy painting?
Well, you know, I got this little painting here, and it's little, but it's not wimpy. You can see it's got a lot of energy, a lot of strength to it. You know, we see a lot of these little paintings, and they just lack a little something. You know, there's something missing, and I'm going to show you what that something is, and I'm going to show you how to make sure that your paintings don't end up wimpy.
And you're going to show us how to paint big paintings. So I got this thing that's I tell artists this all the time. If you want to make more money, what do? You stop making wimpy paintings.
That's right.
And that has a double meaning, right? Because
that's right.
If you paint large, you're going to get more money for your painting. And if you paint better, you're going to get more money for your painting. And if a painting grabs you from across the room and it shakes you and it says, "Come over here and look at me," that's a good painting.
All right, yeah. So I'm going to show everybody how to make nice, big, strong paintings that can grab you from across the room.
Outstanding. Well, let's get the show officially started, Kyle.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhodes.
Well, if you're going to be making wimpy paintings, you're not going to want to watch this, but if you want to stop making wimpy paintings, this day is for you. Welcome to Art School Live. I'm Eric Rhodes, and our guest today is Kyle Buckland, and he does not make wimpy paintings. I sat next to him, or stood next to him at the plein air convention one year, and he had like this giant canvas, and he did that canvas in the same amount of time I did my little wimpy painting. And that's why he's here today, because he's going to show you how to stop making wimpy paintings. But look at some of his work here. It's pretty cool. He is quite the artist, really energetic. He's got a lot of movement, a lot of energy in his paintings. Look at that. I love that. So this is really going to be a great opportunity for you. Nice. That reminds me of Lake Tahoe. We're going to be out in Lake Tahoe painting later this year. Hello. Okay. All right, so Kyle, let's get right to this because people need to learn how to stop making wimpy paintings. How big is that panel that you have there?
So I'm working on a 30 by 40 today.
And that looks like canvas because I could see it bounce.
Yeah, it's a stretched canvas, and it's actually got some texture already on it. So I've primed over an old painting, and we've got a nice texture on here. So already a little bit of energy going on the canvas.
And is it dry?
It's completely dry, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right,
so,
take it away. What are you going to paint?
Well, I want to talk first a little bit about my materials, because one of the things about painting big, strong paintings is making sure that you have enough paint out. And I can't stress this enough. I say squeeze out twice as much as you think you need and then use it all. And of course, we want a big brush. So we've got a number 12 flat brush here to start laying this big painting in. And we're going to do a scene that's actually a stream up in Colorado that was a reference photo I took when I was at the convention a couple years ago. So wonderful location. So just a beautiful place and just really inspiring. So, you know, thinking about painting big, strong paintings, another thing we want to think about is stepping back from our canvas and holding our brush at the end. I always say you pay for the whole handle, you might as well use it, right? We don't want to be clamped up way up here. We want to hold our brush back here at the end, and this is going to give us a good expressive type of brush stroke. Now, if we look, one thing that's going to help us when we're painting large is to think about big shapes. And I want you to notice I've got some reference photos here with some overlays, and we can put them up. There's a radiating line stem that is in this reference picture where we've got this kind of a wagon wheel spoke with all these different lines radiating out from it. So before I'm even thinking about trees or rocks or creeks, I'm thinking about these big shapes that move your eye throughout the painting. Another big shape that happens is this big S shape that kind of weaves all the way through this design here, and you can kind of see that in that overlay. So, you know, right off the bat, I'm thinking about these big shapes, okay? I'm not thinking about how do I paint this tree or how do I paint that little branch? We want to use big brushes, big piles of paint, and look at these big, large shapes. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have to draw. We still want to pay attention to where we're putting things, right? But I want to build the picture on these directional lines. So all throughout the process, we'll be keeping those lines in mind. Now, the goal here is not to paint this entire painting in this during this demonstration. What I really want to focus on is the initial kind of make or break steps where you lay in your big dark areas and you get all this exciting energy happening. You know, we really want to take some time to think about what you're doing in the beginning, and then you want to go and attack the canvas. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm using burnt sienna and ultramarine blue right now. And this is a great combination because we can kick it over to the warm just a little bit with a little extra burnt sienna, or we can kick it back over to the cool with a little ultramarine blue. So you can see that already I'm establishing some relationships that have to do with temperature and value. You hear the term massing in all the time, right? Let's mass in our darks. What's that mean? Well, what it means is instead of trying to get every single individual rock drawn right now, I really want to squint down my eyes and look at these big shapes that are happening here. You know, and don't be afraid to really get in there and sling some of this paint at this early stage.
Sling it, baby, sling it.
We want, you know, because there will be plenty of time for careful brush strokes later on. And when you start a painting with this intense energy and movement, what happens is you create this beautiful dynamic contrast in the end when you start putting on very delicate brush strokes. So right now I'm just looking for these big shadows in these rocks, some almost like little signposts along the way so I can remember where different parts of the painting are. For example, we've got this little pool of water that comes down right here. That's going to be an important part of this painting, so I want to go ahead and establish that, just a little shape of where that pool of water is, and then I want to get a nice warm tone in there. So just just start mapping out where some of these different areas are in this painting. And notice too that although I've got these diagonals headed up towards the corner, they're not going directly to the corner. That would create some tension. So I'm, either pulling them up, above the corner or down below the corner a little bit. If you come straight out to the corner, you're going to be splitting your diagonal 50-50. And so that's not always the greatest idea when you think about creating a dynamic composition. I'm going to get a good bit of ultramarine blue now on my brush and just get a nice cool tone down here in the bottom left. There's a lot of
comments. Are you using some kind of a medium at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got, this is a Galkit medium thinned down with a little bit of Gamsol thinner. I like it about 3 parts Galkit to 1 part Gamsol. The Galkit's a little thick when it comes out of the tube, but you can play with that up to about 50-50. Some people like it a little thinner, and other people like it a little thicker. But yeah, it really helps the paint flow off of the brush, which is going to be good, especially when you're painting large, because you don't want to have to keep coming back and coming back. And so once we get a good bit of this medium in our brush, the paint really flows off of the brush like ink, from a pen. So
yeah. Hello, London. If you guys tell us where you're watching from today. I see
All
Sweden
right.
in there. Hello, Sweden.
Hello, awesome. We've got these pine trees in the back. The more I paint, the more I find that my early stages of my paintings almost resemble a drawing, like a charcoal sketch. I use hatching, sort of like I'm doing right now, to create a half tone. So you can use the brush like a stick of charcoal at this stage, just creating some beautiful energy and lines. It's so important to tie these dark shapes together. And what I mean by that is you'll notice that, I'm creating this big dark shape. And although there's lots of little rocks and areas that are broken up in the reference photo, I'm really working hard to pull all those shapes together into one big shape, because our eye loves to follow the darks throughout the painting. So we're creating a bridge for the eye to move all around this piece. Now, one thing I find really helpful, and this is something I do that's a little different than other painters, is I like to put in some nice dark accents early on. You know, so I'm going to grab some burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. That's pretty much what I've been working with the whole time. But I'm going to use a little less medium. So what that does is means we're controlling the opacity of the paint. So by making it more opaque here, we're going to get a darker value. And so I just like to kind of redraw some important little areas now that I have this darker dark on my brush here.
Question from Joni watching on Twitch. Why do you wear gloves?
Well, I you know, it's kind of twofold, the answer there. It definitely makes cleanup easier. I'm a messy painter. I end up getting paint all over me and usually everything near me when I'm painting. So it, you know, it makes it a little easier when I'm cleaning up. But I also use, you know, with a paint thinner, and sometimes that gets on the handle of my brush, and I don't really want to absorb a lot of that into my skin either. So it's also kind of a safety thing too. All right, so now I'm looking at, you know, you can see how those little accents or those darkest darks almost work like rhythmic notes throughout this piece. So if we think of music, we could have little accents that are sort of rhythmic notes that repeat throughout a piece of music, and they help to pull us through the piece of music. Same thing with these accents in this piece, is they're helping to kind of move the eye around the painting. Now this ground that I'm working on is sort of this warm gray. This is just a mixture of some leftover paint I had on my palette from a previous painting. So, you know, that's a great way to reuse some paint. If you're using lots of paint, you'll end up with lots of paint left on your palette. And you can just scoop that all together and mix it up, and then use it to coat your painting. It makes a beautiful warm ground to paint on. So I'm going to get another little tree in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and start adding a little bit of color. So I'll talk briefly about my colors. I've got permanent matter deep, permanent red light, permanent yellow medium, lemon yellow, phthalo blue, and ultramarine blue. And then down the side of my palette, I use burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and ivory black. So what I end up with is a lot of vibrant colors across the top of the palette, and then sort of some earth colors along the side. So that gives me a sort of a very prismatic approach, because I've got the primaries across the top, and then sort of some toned down versions of the primaries along the side there. So I want a green now, but nothing too vibrant, right? We want to save our most vibrant colors for the end. Notice how much my body is playing a role in this, right? So when you hold the brush here, you're getting all this movement of your shoulder. You know, when you hold a brush like this, you're very limited. You're using just your wrist, right? But this starts to get the whole arm and even the entire body into the brush stroke.
You can pretend to be a sword fighter.
Yes, yeah. I always tell my students when I'm teaching, I say, you know, you want to think about it like you're fencing in a sense, you know, and you're almost in a sword fight with the painting, and it just creates this beautiful energy in a painting that is very hard to get if you're painting very small, you know, and not that you can't get it in a small painting, but when you paint large, what will happen is you'll become more comfortable with moving the brush in, you know, these big kind of sweeping strokes, and it'll change the way you approach painting small.
Here's a question from India.
I
can't pronounce her name. She says, did you start painting big early in your career, or did you start painting big later on? Lots of people are afraid to paint big.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually started pretty small. I would paint, you know, 8x10s, and I remember when a 16x20 felt large. And then as I started to learn more about the Cape Ann painters, 𝗵𝗆𝗆𝗃 is one of my favorite painters, I started to notice the size of some of their paintings, and I started painting larger and larger. And what I found is that the larger I painted, it just became relative. After a while, a 16x20 started to feel small. And so I just gradually kind of worked my way up. And now a 24x30 is almost like an average size canvas to me.
I have an 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗃 in my collection.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, great painter and just a fantastic legacy of painters. You know, his father was a painter and his son is a painter as well. One great thing about having this ground on here, we've got this gray, is it allows us to really pop some lights. And what I mean by that is we can, you know, we can really start to grab some lighter values and start to establish some of highlights in this very quickly, because we're not competing with the white of the canvas. So there are benefits to that, and there are also, you know, benefits to painting on a white ground. But that's why I encourage students to always try different things, right?
Is that pure white you're using?
This is a titanium white with just a little bit of a permanent yellow deep added to it. And I'm just looking for some real light areas right now, just again to kind of map out where these light areas go, just like I did with the accents. I don't want to do too much of this. I always say this is like icing on a cake. You know, a little bit is good, but you don't, if you get a big mouthful of icing, sometimes it's just too much. So you got to be careful with these kind of highlight strokes.
I like icing. I like icing in my mouth better than I like icing on paintings.
Yeah. And now I'm going to go in with a cooler tone. I'm going to mix permanent red light and ultramarine blue to get a nice purple, but it'll be toned down just a little bit because there's a little bit of yellow in that permanent red light, and yellow is the complementary color to purple. So when we mix them, we're going to get sort of a neutralized purple. I want to look at sort of this big Z shape here, that, or S shape rather, that runs through here. I don't want to lose that. So I'm going to go ahead and get some of this lighter value. It's not quite as light as we can go, but it's light enough that it'll really read against some of these darker tones. And I want to start weaving some of this light in throughout the painting here, just to help pull your eye around. And you'll see how that starts to create this nice composition. That's why design stems are so important. They're really like armature for a sculpt or for a painter. If you think about armature when you're making sculpture, it lays out the big forms for you, and you know, so you don't have to second guess yourself once you get into the process. You know that your biggest forms are already there and are going to make sense. So having an idea of this big S that zigzags through here and having these radiating lines.
That grade now looks just like there's light on those rocks.
Yeah, it's, you know, it doesn't take much, and that's what you'll find is when you're painting large like this, you can be very expressive, and it can be so effective because your brain is so good at filling in the gaps, right? So we're already starting to sense that there's sunlight hitting some of these rocks out here. Even bringing in a little warm tone will even make that more that suggestion more apparent. So I'm going to throw some burnt sienna and permanent yellow deep or permanent yellow medium together with a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow ochre. And what I'm looking for is sort of this sunlight on the ground over here. That's a little bit too warm. So I'm going to tone it down with a little burnt sienna, and I'm going to throw a little bit of the green into it that I've already got mixed up. That's another reason why when you're working large, you'll find that painting and mixing large areas of paint on your palette is really helpful too, because you can always come back and reuse some of the colors that you've already mixed to, you know, to affect other colors. And it kind of creates this beautiful color harmony, because then a lot of your mixtures have a lot of the same colors in them. So many benefits from painting large. And I promise you that the more you do it, the easier it'll get. I know it's a little intimidating at first. One thing that really helped me get over my fear of painting large is I worked for a theater when I was younger, and I did some scenic art, and we would paint these big giant backdrops that were, you know, 20 by 40 foot. And all of a sudden a big canvas didn't seem so big. So the larger you paint, the more that'll feel like a normal size canvas to you. And you don't even have to try to do anything. The only thing you have to do really is just to do it more often. So if you can just, talk yourself into getting some big canvases and going out on location, or, setting up and painting outside, or even painting from photograph in the studio, but getting used to swinging those bigger brushes and really putting on a lot of paint.
I should mention that we've got a couple of videos that Kyle did.
Yeah.
One is called 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗃, and that's on streaming and or DVD. And then he has another one called Courageous Design, how to design paintings. And both are available at painttube.tv. This is looking really, really wild and fun. I'm having a lot of fun with this, Kyle. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And another thing I want to let everybody know too is that you don't feel like you have to take months and months on a large painting. In theory, you want to be thinking about this big painting just like you would think about an 8x10. Just because there's more space doesn't mean you have to treat it any different. The biggest thing is you want to have bigger brushes, larger piles of paint, but the process can still be the same. And in fact, when you paint a large painting as if it were a small study, it ends up with all this beautiful, vibrant energy. You probably, Eric, you've probably had this experience where you see, like a sergeant's study or this, and then you see the larger painting and you think it's almost like something was missing from the larger painting, or maybe sergeant's not the best example of that. He could knock one of those big ones out of the park, but it's easy to get to where you could, just overwork the excitement out of a piece if you think that you have to do it differently because it's big. I want to start to define just a little bit here. Part of this process is kind of this push and pull between letting areas be abstract and then also deciding what exactly is happening in certain areas. Because we want to give the brain enough information to fill in the gaps. But if I give you too much information, then the viewer just, gets it all at once and they're not invited to play a role in interpreting what they're seeing. I think part of the magic of Impressionism is it invites that viewer in to play a role in experiencing the scene themselves.
Boy, howdy.
Let's see. I'm going to get a little ultramarine blue now and white. So nothing, this is not a fancy color mixture, just pure ultramarine blue out of the tube and a little titanium white. And I'm going to come through and hit some of these areas where there's shadows cast on the water. I might even add just a touch of phthalo blue to it to really kick up the chroma just a little bit.
Wow, sure did.
And so we want to be aware of the light is coming from behind all this. This is a backlit scene. So where we have the rocks kind of casting shadows on the water surface, that's what I'm after right now, is just these little cool touches. I also have to be aware too that just like your eye will follow the darks around, it'll also follow strong color around. So anytime we're using a strong color like this, it's good to kind of put it around in different areas in the painting so that the eye can kind of follow through and connect the dots almost, so to speak.
If you guys just tuned in, we're teaching you how to stop doing wimpy paintings. Our guest is Kyle Buckland. Kyle, we're going to take a quick break. Don't touch that. Don't do it. We're going to show it in a minute. Put your brush down and we'll be right back. We have a free video. We have a free gift for you guys right now. It's called 201 Essential Plein Air Tips. You can master the art of outdoor painting. Just go to pleinairmagazine.com/ebook. Also very excited about the plein air convention. Let's play that right now.
Every artist deserves a chance to discover what they're truly capable of. This is yours. Join the world's top painters for 5 days of immersive learning, creativity, and connection in the most picturesque regions of Lake Tahoe and Reno.
I enjoy the scenery, I enjoy the locations, and I enjoy meeting people.
With hands-on coaching, 5 stages, plus daily painting sessions and a community of passionate creators, you'll grow your skills like never before.
It's a wonderful experience. I mean, it's a wealth of information. I got personal instruction from 𝗕𝗂𝗵𝗴. Do you believe that? I'm so excited.
It's just awesome to hear other people talk about painting.
At PACE, you're not just learning, you're connecting. Build lifelong friendships with like-minded artists who share your passion. This is where ideas spark, creativity flourishes, and your next breakthrough begins.
I would say just go for it.
As long as I'm living and able, I will come to these. Just sign up and go.
Don't wait, seats are limited. Join us at the Plein Air Convention and Expo in Lake Tahoe and Reno. Secure your spot now.
Guest today is Kyle Buckland. He's talking about how to stop doing wimpy paintings. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right.
You've been to the Plein Air Convention and you don't do wimpy paintings there. What's that experience like?
Oh, that is awesome. I'll tell you, I've been there the past 3 years and taught there, and I've never seen such a enthusiastic coming together of artists. I mean, it's the energy there is just so incredible, and it's just this sort of osmosis. You just learn just by being there. I mean, there's just so much creativity going on everywhere you look. It's the equivalent of like a big musical festival. I think about where you go to these musical festivals and there's just bands on every stage happening all around you. It's like that for artists, and I highly recommend it.
It's a good analogy. Hey, by the way, I want to tell everybody that we kind of did a thing last week on Friday we called Scratching the Plein Air Itch for people who are interested in learning about plein air painting or how to travel with paints or, a lot of basic stuff. Plus, we talked a lot about the convention and what the details are of it. We even offered a special discount code on that video, which we decided we'll keep that live for some of you for a little while. So go there, check it out. It's called Scratching the Plein Air Itch, and you can find it here on YouTube, where all of our stuff lives. All right. Okay,
Awesome.
Back to Kyle and non-wimpy paintings.
Non-wimpy paintings, big, strong paintings. We've got huge piles of paint. We're holding our paintbrush like a sword. We're standing up and painting from the shoulder. We want to get this beautiful energy going. And I promise you that if you work large, the larger the more you do that, the more comfortable it'll become. And you'll see a change in the way that you handle the paint. And it'll translate into any size. So now when I paint small, I can still capture this big, strong energy even in a small painting. But this is one of the best ways to learn to quit painting wimpy paintings is by getting a big canvas and just jumping right into it. Let's go ahead and add some vibrant color now. We can start to establish our center of interest, which is really this tree here. It has this beautiful grade from this kind of warm reflected light. So I'm using this permanent red light here, and I want to get, if I get this too light, it won't work. It'll look like sunlight on it. But if I get it just light enough, we'll have this beautiful reflected light. So I want to kind of toe the line there. Now, as we come up towards the top, we get a little bit more of a rosy red in there. So I'm going to add some permanent matter deep just to get some color in there. Now, as we come down, we get, where the tree actually starts to stretch out and it sets its roots down, and we get some cool reflected light from the sky. So to do that, I'm going to grab some phthalo blue and ultramarine blue and go back into my dark purple that's already on the palette, and we'll get this beautiful, cool tone. And I don't want to go too blue yet, so I'm gonna save just a little bit of that where I could push it just a little more if I wanted to. But just to start to describe some of that reflected light on that tree. And this is, you know, one of the cool things about painting like this is that you can leave a lot of areas pretty abstract for a long time and then decide how much detail you want to do. Because a lot of times we can, you know, get away with leaving some areas big and bold and loose. I want to come in and get a little bit of a nice light blue for the sky off in the distance, but I don't want to get this too light in value, because if it gets too light, it'll start competing with our sunlit areas on the water. So I want to be aware of that. So I'm going to hold that value down just a little bit. It's these types of decisions that you'll get better and better at making the more you paint. You'll be more comfortable learning how to control your values. And you know,
if you guys don't understand the term value, let's pull up the value scale so everybody understands. Every color has a value of dark or light or in between. There's roughly about 9 values, and so we try to pull up these values so that you can see them and you can learn from them. And it's a really great tool to really get to know that and understand.
Absolutely.
I'm not finding my value image. There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, so we want to be
really
thinking in
light is
terms.
the low value.
Yeah. Yeah, and the more you learn about value, the more freedom you have with color. And what I mean by that is you'll know how to use your color when you know what value you need in a certain color. So a lot of times when a student says, I'm having trouble mixing that color, they're actually having trouble mixing the right value. So you can see how just opening up that area just a little bit starts to create one more level of depth. And I'm doing what's called negative painting right now. So as I'm painting the sky coming through this tree.
You're so negative.
Yeah, it's creating these, the shapes of the trees themselves. And what allows me to do that is I have plenty of paint on my brush and I have a good bit of medium still in the paint. So the paint just sits right on top of the underpainting. So, you know, 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗴 painting is where you're painting wet into wet. And once you get the hang of it, it can be really beneficial. You know, you can start augmenting the colors on your canvas by using some of the underpainting. For example, the more I paint with this paintbrush right now without going back to my palette, the darker the value is getting because it's picking up the green from underneath. And so I can do smaller and smaller sky holes, because what happens is we've got this concept of diffraction. So if you look at John Carlson's book, Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting, he talks a lot about this. The bigger the sky hole, the lighter the value. So as we get smaller with the sky hole, there's less light that can come through to our eye. So we actually have to darken the value a little bit. That's really a great way to make your sky holes feel realistic and make it look like you're looking through these trees way off into the distance, as opposed to looking at paint that's just sitting right on the surface. I'm going to go in with a nice, bright, vibrant yellow-green now. So I'm using lemon yellow and phthalo blue. And that's going to be really some of our brightest greens that we have available with this palette. So I'm going to tone it down with just a little titanium white and a little yellow ochre. I want it to be vibrant, but not full-on saturated. And I'm going to start right around this tree that's sort of our center of interest and just pick out a few little areas to start to suggest some sunlight hitting on these pine needles back here. So, and like I said, we can decide how much of this we want to do, you know, and how detailed we want to get. But for right now, I want to kind of hold back on the detail as much as possible. I'm trying to tiptoe up to the detail stages. But you can already see within, you know, 35, 45 minutes, we've already established the basic gist of the scene. There's good, strong energy. There's a dynamic composition happening with this S that weaves throughout the design. And these are the make or break stages of the painting. That's why I decided to kind of focus on this early stage. you want to take your time and think about what you want to do with your painting before you start, because if you want to have a plan, because it's so easy to just jump in and, you know, I get it, you get out there, you get excited about what you're painting, but you don't take time to think about, where do I want to put this composition, you know, how do I want to frame it? And all these things are so important that we really want to take our time, because once you plan out a nice painting like this, it can really seem like it's painting itself, just, you know, to some extent. I want to get this one tree in over on the left. There's another tree that's catching some beautiful reflected light, and it's going to pull our eye over there and kind of balance out some of that warm reflected light here on this tree. So I'm going to go back into this warm tone and just put that in right over there. And we can use a little contour line. So I'm coming back with a little ivory black. I don't use a ton of ivory black, and when I do, I usually use it to augment a color. So I'm going to throw it into a purple that I already have mixed up. And then
what is a contour line?
A contour line is a line that just follows the edge of a form. So we could almost think of like cartoons are probably the 100% contour lines.
Or coloring books.
Yeah, coloring books. Yep. So so basically doing a line drawing. Now, if you look at some of Picasso's drawings, he was fantastic at figuring out where you needed a contour and where you could let that contour just dissolve into the edge of a form. And that can be really helpful when you're doing it, because what you don't want to do is outline every single part of your painting and have it look like a cartoon. But a well-placed contour can really help ground an object like a tree and kind of put it in its place in the composition, especially if you need just a little definition along an edge. I'm going to hit a little bit more of this cool reflected light down here. And one good thing too, I usually come back at this stage and start to redraw a little bit. So you will see me coming back with some more contours at this stage. And just restating some of these details in and around my center of interest. We can even start to do some smaller branches coming off of some of these trees. Now, when I do these branches, you can see how I hold the brush between my thumb and my forefinger. This is a great way to create a very expressive tree branch, because you can twist the branch as you come out. And that creates a living kind of brush stroke that looks very organic. You can kind of see right there how that creates that beautiful kind of organic twisting shape to our line. And this is a round brush. So everything I've been using so far has been flat, but now I've got a little round, like a number 2 round bristle brush.
So William in where? Oh, Norway. Where are you trying to draw the eye?
So what I really want is for the eye to come into the painting at the bottom, move up through here, and end up kind of at this tree here, but have ways to explore. I don't want the eye to get stuck here. The more I progress, the more I'll kind of refine some of these outer edges to make sure that as you come out to the edge of the painting, there's always a way to get back to the center of interest. But you don't get stuck there, right? You might come over here, maybe we come over here and explore for a little bit, and then we can kind of follow those cooler tones up around here. It's really like taking the eye for a walk when you're composing like this. And this is, there are kind of awkward stages that paintings go through, and you just have to learn how to kind of plow through those stages. So there's a lot left right now that's still unresolved in this painting, but part of the delicate dance that we do as artists is finding out how to kind of harness all that wild energy and bring it into some focus without losing that initial burst of energy.
If you guys are digging this, make sure you give a thumbs up or heart so that Kyle feels a little of your love.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Of course, if you have the ability to pass this on to other people, please do. This is really fun. And this is not looking very wimpy.
No, we want big, strong, bold designs, bold colors. And these are the types of paintings that will pull you across the room, because when you go, if you think about going to a gallery or museum, you step back and you kind of go into the middle of the room and you look around. And one of the things that will immediately draw you to a piece is the design. That's normally what we see first. And that's often overlooked when painters are painting, because we get so preoccupied with how do we mix that color, or what type of brush do I need to make a tree? And then we forget about, oh, well, where do I put that tree? And how does that tree relate, in its shape to the other shapes around it? And the more you practice that, the more you start to see those big shapes and those relationships in nature, the more you're seeing like a painter, and you start to really be able to analyze nature like a painter.
Kyle, stick your face on camera real quick so everybody can see you halfway through all of this. All right, good.
Yeah. All right, so I want to start really kind of looking at defining some areas now. We've got all this beautiful energy, and the trick is, how can we, kind of wrangle it into some form here without losing all that energy. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to slow down just a little bit and draw some rocks in here with a sort of a generic dark that I'm mixing up with this permanent red light and ultramarine blue. And this is, some people think when you paint loose that drawing is not as important, but I would say it's even more important when you're painting loose like this. You have to, still be able to think about where your forms are, what causes the light to fall on the objects the way it's falling. All that becomes very important when you're painting very loosely. I'm going to get a nice light purple here, because there's a value on the rocks, and when we're talking about value is, how dark or how light is something. And it's a nice light value, but it's not as light as the sunlight on the water, and it's almost like the color of the ground, but I'm going to start working some of that light back on top of some of these rocks here. And notice I'm still, trying to hold my brush like this, right? I'm not cramped up and all up in here. By stepping back, when you're working large like this, it helps to really step back from your canvas. I recommend kind of stopping halfway through, or 2 or 3 times, and taking a walk away from it. Even if you walk 50 yards away from it, you're going to get this amazing perspective and see how much is already, starting to become suggested in all these brush strokes. Now, remember I said I wanted to define this area over here where there's a little waterfall that falls down into a little pool, and we've got this nice warm tone over here. So I want to pay attention to this shape right here. This is going to be an important kind of secondary interest. So you could think of having a center of interest, and then having a secondary interest is maybe another area where your eye slows down just a little bit, but it doesn't steal the show from the main center of interest. We could think of those other areas as like supporting roles in a film. They're there to help the star of the show really shine. There's a beautiful rosy purple happening, and I think it's maybe from some brush that's gotten wet and matted down to the rocks. But I want to establish a little bit of that rosy color right in here. It's going to look nice with that orange and blue. Another thing I'll mention is I don't have any secondaries on my palette. So I have primaries. I don't have any green, orange, or purple. So all the greens and oranges and purples that you're seeing here on the canvas are being mixed. One of the benefits of working with a limited palette and mixing all your secondaries is you get this beautiful color harmony, because all the colors have similar threads of color running through them. I think some students get it in their mind that it's going to be easier to paint the more colors they have. but a lot of times the more limited your palette gets, the easier it is to achieve color harmony. I'm going to come in with a knife, a palette knife now, and just start to hit some highlights on some of these rocks as go back into the distance, and some of this area where the water's catching the light. So we've got this almost this kind of reserve value because I haven't gone too light yet. So we can really start to hit these little sparkly areas with this palette knife, and it'll start to create this beautiful kind of sparkle, like the sun's just dappled through the pines and hitting on parts of the water. The more I paint too, the more I find that I'm loving combining palette knife painting with brushwork. So when I first started painting, I did a lot of painting with the brush, and very seldom would I pull out a palette knife. But now I'm really loving this, really just using both palette knife and paintbrush in the same painting. We can do some smaller branches with the palette knife too, just to get a variety of marks.
Okay, Kyle.
Yeah.
We're going to stop for a second.
Okay.
And we're going to ask everyone to vote. Go into the chat, and is it wimpy or is it not wimpy? You get to vote. Is it wimpy or is it not wimpy? Okay, so go into the chat right now. How's it feeling? I think it. I'm not going to try to influence this decision. But I want the people in the chat. How's it feeling? Is it wimpy or not? We've got a few more minutes. Okay, so now the pressure's on. Is it going to be wimpy?
Be honest. Fair enough. I can take it now. Be honest with me.
Okay, people are starting to go in there.
Okay. And the one of the fun things about painting like this is, you know, it doesn't take as much as you would think. I promise you this is true. You know, people, we always overestimate how much we need to do. I mean, I would much rather see a painting that is beautifully underworked than something that is overworked and just kind of stale from you know, getting too much done to it. So.
Okay, guys, go into the chat. Make sure you tell us. Which is it? Is it wimpy or is it not wimpy?
And I want to show you how to start layering up some paint too. So I want to hold this up to the camera. When I say I use a lot of paint on the brush, this is what I'm talking about, because we can start painting with the edge of that blob and get these beautiful little tiny types of strokes that are almost sculptural in the way that they sit up off of the canvas.
Ooh la la. Maybe you have time to change your vote. That's definitely not wimpy.
And we are working on a 30 by 40 here, so I know sometimes it's hard to tell on the screen what size, but this is a pretty good size canvas. But again, I don't want you to feel like you have to work for months and months and months on something like this. You know, set yourself a challenge and say, okay, I'm going to give myself 3 or 4 hours at the most. You know, and if you really want to challenge yourself, see what you can do in an hour and a half. Yeah.
I'm working on a 48 by 48 right now.
Oh, awesome.
I need to go up and speed it up.
And you know, it's great to I have this book here I want to show real quick. It's a Hawthorne on painting, Charles Webster Hawthorne. Great little book. He says, realize the value of putting down your first impression quickly. And I thought that was very appropriate for today's demo, because you know, there's this initial inspiration that hits you, and the longer you get away from that, you know, the harder it is to tap into it. So when we can preserve you know, as much of that initial inspiration or that first impression on the canvas, then you know, it can kind of tell us how to finish it. You know, but we want to seize it while it's there.
I don't know. I think Wimpy is winning. I think you're going to have to do something, Kyle, to
Wimpy
pull it through, because it looks like Wimpy is is, I was really surprised by that. You're
Okay.
gonna have to step it up, Kyle.
Step it up, yeah. Well, I think, you know, when you paint like this too, you got to figure out where that line is, right, between, you know, you got to get it to be good and bold, but you also want it to make sense too, right? So we don't want to just for the sake of having big, bold brush strokes, not pay attention to where we're putting things too. So it's very important to kind of find that balance.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe we should ask the audience what it needs.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. Next thing you know, they'll have flying pigs in there.
I'm not adding any cows. Sorry.
Well, you know, you have room for a cow.
And now we can start, you know, I love this we get texture, right? So we have all these different ways of creating light and atmosphere. And we want to start building up some texture too at a certain point. You know, so less medium, more paint straight out of the tube, you know, nice big blobs of paint, and it becomes almost this sculptural thing. You know, if we go to the museums and we look at these big, large paintings at the museums, you'll find that there's just tons and tons of paint on them.
All right, I'm giving you 30 seconds.
All right.
30 seconds to redeem yourself, then I'm pulling the plug. Because we're running out of time.
All right.
No pressure.
Yeah.
People will never.
Now, sometimes it's nice to paint a little faster than you can think. You know, your brain's really good at taking over sometimes. So I just wanted to get some sparkle in there without overdoing it. Yep.
All right. Come on screen, put the brush down. Okay, one more stroke. That's it. Oh, you put it
We'll get one big blue stroke up here in the sky. All right.
All right. Kyle, you are a rock star, man.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's the final vote. The final tally. Is it Wimpy or is it not Wimpy? Wimpy or not? I think it is. Look at the comments. It is not Wimpy.
All right.
Hey.
I knew we'd make it work.
All right. Well, Kyle, we've put all your contact information, etc., into the chat. If people want to find it, they'll go there and find it. Kyle, you're a rock star. Thanks for being on today, man.
Oh, always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're going to be on Plein Air Live, which is our online conference about plein air painting coming up in November. It is spectacular. You can sign up now. We still have some more faculty that's going to be added, but you're going to be one of them, including some of the greats, other greats, not just yourself. And so make sure that you guys check it out at pleinairlive.com. Kyle, you are a rock star and a good sport. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. Right back at you.
All right, man. Thank you. Okay, well, that kind of wraps it up for today. We want to make sure you subscribe to this program. Just go to YouTube. If you're watching on one of the many other platforms, that's cool, but go to YouTube and make sure you subscribe. So just go to Art School Live or my name and find us and subscribe. By the way, if you find my personal page in there with the kids' pictures and stuff from my youth, I guess I should delete that, but that's not it. Okay, guys. Well, thank you for being here again, and make sure to sign up for the Plein Air Convention. It's spectacular, and there's a special deal going on right now. If you use the code ASL200, that's right, you get $200 off, and that's a special that's expiring soon. We had it expiring at see, what day was it expiring? Sunday, but we decided to open it up again. Okay, and that's it for today. We're here every weekday at 12 noon. Our goal is to teach you to paint and make you understand that anybody can learn to paint. There's lots of approaches, lots of different styles. If you watch just 5 programs, any 5 that are teaching painting, you can learn to do this because it's a process. If you can drive a car, you can do a recipe, you can learn to paint. Now, on Mondays, we are going to do marketing. On Fridays, we're going to do feedback, critiques of paintings, but we have guest artists throughout the middle of the week, like Kyle. So thank you again for tuning in, guys, and have a terrific day. Bye.